delight to have Hugh Glover here, one of our founders, one of the key contributors that was there at the beginning of Vulcan. And the UDP project, utilizing the digital protocol, is our principal project, really. It's in a very interesting phase of its life, and I'll let Hugh introduce himself and talk about the project.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Good morning, or since some people are listening to this online, it might be good afternoon or it might be good evening. When James asked me to do this in the first place, he said, just imagine you're at a dinner party and you're explaining what the UDP project is about. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't think any dinner party that I go to is something that people would want to sit and listen to a presentation. But I hope this morning you're all bright, wide awake, and this will actually give you an introduction to the project as a whole. What I'm going to do is find the right button first. Yeah, there's lots of different shapes. Yeah, it's all right, it's working now. I'm going to start from the very basics on the dinner party principle. So what the heck is a protocol? Why does it actually matter? And how do we work through? So if you go out to do a clinical trial, clinical study, there is a whole set of things that have to be decided in advance. And you have to get approval for those things in advance before you can start doing anything. That's what the protocol is. And as this slide shows, some of the things that will be defined within that. But your protocol is not, skinny 2-page document. It's a great thick thing that covers all the aspects of it, from the very beginning of the study and how you find the sites, how you find the subjects, right the way through to the very end, and how you do the analysis of the data. So the protocol really defines what you are going to be doing all the way through that study. But you can turn the telescope around and you look at it the other way, and then you see the protocol as the basis for a whole series of questions that you might want to ask. So you might want to start off when you're first thinking about this. You've done some definition of your study in your protocol, but you're going to go off and you're going to be looking, as Gustav was saying, a study where actually most of your subjects would be in intensive care. So you can say, can we find enough subjects on the basis of what the protocol is saying? And you might then come back and say, well, actually, we're not going to get enough subjects. So what we're going to have to do is change the way we are going to do this. But you're finding that out at an early stage in the process, rather than having worked your way through, started the study off, and then suddenly discover you can't find enough subjects. How long will the study take? Get down to the actual practicalities. You've got somebody who's on a study. Is the thing that's in the study the only thing that's their health concern? It's very unlikely. So you actually want to be able to tie the rest of their healthcare journey into what's going on in the study at the same time. And this is that schedule of activities work that Gustav also mentioned. I didn't actually pay him in advance to put UDP references in all the way along, but it was very useful. Thank you. So what problem is actually UDP addressing? I've told you what the protocol is, I've told you what we can do with it, but what's UDP actually trying to do? Well, it's utilizing the digital protocol. We're trying to get away from the sets of tools that are used at the moment. So what typically happens, if we go back to that schedule of activities again, that gets written out or copied into a spreadsheet. That's a very, very common thing. And then it gets copied from that spreadsheet into another spreadsheet, and from that spreadsheet into another one. So a schedule of activities can be copied easily 20 times in the course of a study, probably more than that. And we all know what happens as soon as you start transcribing things. You get errors, it's inefficient, it's slow, and we heard earlier this morning from Jesper that speed is important. We've got to be able to get through these things quickly. So what we are trying to do is get away from all the standard tools that are being used at the moment to get this to have a single source of truth, which is digital, and then we can start to answer those other questions. And I would not for a moment suggest that Vulcan is the only one that's working on this. The little chip in the bottom right-hand corner there is from CDisk and Transcelerate. They've been doing some work in this area for a long time. So what's Vulcan actually bringing to this, if there are other people already out there working on it? Well, not surprisingly, fire is the answer to this. And I want to give you an example here. I like analogues of the way things work. So I want you to think about shipping. So if you go back to maybe the 1950s, that picture in that top left-hand corner is how cargo used to be transferred around the world. It came in random shape, but the actual mechanics of getting the goods from one part of the world to another is an automated process. There are tools that make that process easier. They're called container ports. They're big, expensive things. What goes on inside the container is not the concern of the containerization or the tools. And in one sense, you can think of fire like that. Fire provides you a whole series of tools for doing things, and it gives you a means of packaging up data to move it from one place to another in a reasonably straightforward and efficient fashion. So the reason we got into this process is that the International Committee for Harmonization, and that's not quite the right name. Somebody corrected me the other day, but I can't remember exactly what it is. The international body that sets the standard for how those protocols that we were talking about should actually be written and used. They have a subcommittee called M11, and M11 has been working at defining a new way of packaging up the data so that you can use it better. And they came to us about 2 years ago now, I suppose, and said, could we create a fire implementation guide for their technical specification? And in one sense, we said no, because what we could see in that was that their use case, which was simply from sponsor to regulator, was just a very small amount of what could be done with a digital protocol. And so we talked to the other people that were doing things. So the chip I showed you earlier with Transcelerate and CDisk, we brought these people together. So we have this, what in many ways is a very complicated project, where we've got ICH creating various artifacts. We've got CDisk and Transcelerate creating various artifacts. And then in Vulcan, what we're trying to do is pull these things together and then put this fire tooling and wrapper around it to make the whole process easier to move the data from one place to another. One confusion that everybody seems to get tangled up in is that, oh, so you're going to replace the CDisk model with the fire model. No, we're not. But the CDisk model is the replacement for the ICH model. No, it's not. There's 3 different models. They do 3 different things. So the CDisk model defines your individual data items. It gives you a crisp, clear definition of each single bit of how a protocol is put together. The ICH document doesn't worry about the individual granularity, but it says all the information about inclusion-exclusion criteria goes in this bucket. Not too worried about how you organize it, but it goes in this bucket. And then what FIRE is doing is essentially saying, we've got a building kit. Lego bricks is a good example. You can take those Lego bricks, each of those Lego bricks can parcel up the data as defined by the USDM model, the CDIS model, according to the bucket that it's been put into by the ICH model, but you've now put it in a parcel, you can move it. And now you've got a means of moving it around. And you've heard us talk about implementation guides. Well, that is what the core of the technical work that we do is. So we take a bundle of those Lego bricks, those individual standardized resources, and we provide an implementation guide that tells you how you can put those things together in order to make a specific thing. So an implementation guide, James said earlier, oh, it's a document. Yeah, it is a document. It's got a whole chunk of stuff about discussion and background, so it'll give you all that context to it. It's also got the technical content that you need as a developer to be able to do stuff. But again, what I find people tend not to register and tend not to appreciate as an importance is that that implementation guide is also a very technical resource that fits into your Fire server. So if I have set in my implementation guide something which is a restriction on the vocabulary that can be used. So we're saying, if you're going to do this, you must use this vocabulary. That piece that's in that implementation guide can get loaded into a Fire server, and if I send a Lego brick into that, which has got some data that doesn't conform to that vocabulary, the server just goes, no, sorry, that's not right. And you're not creating, you're not having to do serious engineering on the server. It's just a simple extra inclusion into that. So your implementation guide brings a good limitation onto that. In terms of development, what we're on at the moment is the base implementation guide over on the left. We've got a schedule of activities that we need to add on to that. We're going to be looking at inclusion-exclusion criteria this year. That's another piece. What we will have is this nested sequence of implementation guides across the piece to be able to build up, in some ways, what Gustav was actually looking for. I have to stick to my techie roots. I can't go without showing you at least some coding. This is just from the connectathons that we've just been through. Just showing you that we can actually take data on the left, which is in raw JSON format, so very technical format, and we can actually render that out both as a set of resources, but even as a protocol document in a form that people would recognize. So if we put a digital protocol in the center of things, it gives us that means of working much more effectively with the content that's in there. And that's my last slide. If you've got ideas, got suggestions, always pleased to hear them. And as it says on there, we've got webinars, monthly seminars to bring you up to date. Follow the link that we've got on there. So thank you.
I think we've probably got time for one question for Hugh. Are there any questions? Please wait for the microphone because people are online. I know we can hear you in the room.
Thank you for your presentation. My name is Brady Moore from the Dutch Healthcare Institute.
Hang on a minute.
No, sorry. He's brought you another one.
I'll give you this one.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, this is better.
Yep.
My name is Rainier Mora from the Dutch Healthcare Institute. We just modeled our package statements based on an ontology so that other people can do revalidate based on real world data. If we should have done this packagization or we should modify it, how would that relate with the work you're doing? Because we're using an ontology which gives meaning to the document, which then how can we relate it to FHIR? And also my question is how would it relate to a lot of research data in OMOP, or people are transferring it to OMOP? How would it relate with the things you described on the FHIR level?
There are two different sets of terminology that we have to work with in these things. One set of terminology is essentially what I would call the structural things that make the whole process work. And those need to be something which is universal, that everybody works with. Yeah. And those are things which get defined in the implementation guide as a fixed thing. You know, thou shalt use these, there's no argument about that. At the other end of it, you've got what's got to go on in that study. That's always going to be something which is specific to the study. It would be lovely if we could get everybody to always use exactly the same things. It's not going to happen. But the implementation guide, because it puts it in a form that can load it to the server, at least you can be confident that when the data is put into the server, that it has conformed to this terminology you said it should. Because what so often happens at the moment is that people go off and they go, oh, well, I didn't actually like those. I didn't find the choice I wanted. And they go and invent something else, or you've put in the wrong code and the system hasn't picked it up until you're way off down the line.
So you would say that as the EMA does say yes to a pharmaceutical, and they would use your protocol, basically you've got kind of digital footprint of the study.
Yeah.
Which, when we made the decision on it, it would be easier to reevaluate in the future because you still have got this data definition coming with the study. So it would be easier in our practice to do reevaluation with the Dutch field on how it was on our population.
Yes, it would be, definitely.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.